When I found out I was going to be a parent, I immediately felt a lot of anxiety and worry. So I went on to BetterHelp to try to look for a therapist to help me with that.
My relationship with my family and with my boyfriend and with myself were suffering. I really needed help.
I was ruminating a lot. Really getting those thoughts out to a therapist and getting feedback was just life-changing.
Discover what BetterHelp Online Therapy can do for you. Visit BetterHelp.com today.
There's a comfort in being somewhere that still feels familiar, where people know each other and life moves with a sense of purpose. At Sunnyview, that sense of connection has always come first, shaped by shared values and a way of life that feels steady and true. In a place like Silicon Valley, where so much is always changing, this is somewhere that hasn't lost its center. Explore your options at sunny-view.org, a nonprofit life plan senior community within the Front Porch family.
Rise up! Team Rise! Rise up! Team Rise!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers your Arizona Cardinals. Joining me in episode 792 is my co-host, as always, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com. And we get to talk about Cardinals training camp because that's what the show is about. We have the training camp schedule, we have the number of practices, and then we're going to talk about what is left for the Cardinals to do, what we want to see them, what we need to see them do before that starts. Seth, we have training camp practice. We knew that they were going to report on July 22nd. They're going to have 7 open practices for the public, an 8th that is available for season ticket holders, and the schedule is a little bit different. When you got the email for the training camp schedule, what stood out to you initially?
I mean, I think something that you and I talked about, obviously off the air and in our text message as soon as it got released, right? Was they're just continuing to ramp down the amount of open practices to the public. This is, and we always wondered whether that was a Gannon thing because of how much, he hated being public about things. And now it's just kind of obvious that this is just, it's a continuation of the lesser openness to the public. And maybe it's a year one thing, right? New offense, new system, blah, blah, blah. But it just really does feel like that this is a group or an organization that is kind of slowly peeling back the fan experience of training camp.
Yeah, it's a trend that's been growing. Jonathan Gannon's first year, there were 11 open practices. His last 2 years were 9. And part of that is the last 2 years, they've also shrunk the public practices by 1 and then offered 1 for season ticket holders, adding perhaps a little extra value to being a season ticket holder. This year it reduces to 7. This is the fewest open practices in my memory that the Cardinals have ever had since bringing training camp to State Farm Stadium. Let's look back at 2018, which was we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So previous to this year, the low was 9, whether it was 2018 with Steve Wilkes, the last 2 years with Jonathan Gannon. By comparison, Cliff Kingsbury, who liked to, keep things kind of under wraps. Now, in fairness, there were 2 years he didn't have open training camp practices because of the pandemic, 2020, 2021. But his first year, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 open practices. And I remember back in Bruce Arians, it was as many as 19 open practices for fans. And so now ultimately training camp practices, it's just watching practices. It's not that big a deal. But when you look at it year after year and you see the fan experience kind of decreasing little by little each year, you're like, is this an organizational thing? Is this a media? Is this an NFL thing? Like, I don't understand. Like, why is this simply a way where they're cutting costs? It wouldn't even be that, because they're still, I think they're still going to be out in Glendale for about 3 weeks. And then I think that's pretty much how it always was. But maybe it's a way where they trim a week off of where they're going to be at the Wigwam or the Renaissance or wherever they're housing the players, and getting them back to home base in Tempe. And it is just practice. But I know, dating back to Flagstaff days, where it was super accessible, it was a different experience. I know it wasn't great for the players that were sleeping in dorm rooms. Anytime they needed imaging on players who got hurt, they had to drive them back down to the Phoenix area. There's a lot of reasons why it made sense to come back to Glendale and bet the State Farm Stadium. But the experiences that I personally had as a fan, and then bringing my sons to training camp, where you're not in the stands, you're kind of on the sidelines behind some fences. It was something special, and you've lost that in many ways. It's become a little bit colder. I know player safety plays into it, but it isn't real often where I get into the nostalgia of the olden days. I understand why they brought it to Glendale, but training camp now for fans is nothing like it was before they moved it to Glendale and it was up in Flagstaff.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like, there's just nothing that really gives the fans an inside look at the Arizona Cardinals when you're talking about the fan experience in the day-to-day, right? Like, that's the hard part, is that what people don't understand is, or what the organizations don't understand, is that most fans just can't afford to go to games. They're just
right.
out of reach. So this was a chance for especially families to take their children to training camp to see the Cardinals, or whoever their favorite team was. Now, I will say this. I think with how schools have gotten to the point of, I believe the Chandler School District, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Jess, but I believe the Chandler School District actually starts back on July 15th.
So early. Yeah, we started in the Higley District. We started on the 17th. This year, we're starting on the 23rd of July. And so, yeah, it's far more difficult to have a summer training camp experience than it used to be than when schools were starting in August.
But they're going back to evening practices.
Yes, that's the other part that we want to talk about. That I think it's the other big takeaway. So while there's been a reduction in practices that fans can attend, these practices are actually far more accessible in terms of schedule, because 5 of the 7 practices will be at 4 p.m. And that's the latest that we've ever had. And then 2 of them start at 1:45. Under Bruce Arians, those practices were almost always on, like, every day. They would have a walkthrough at about 10. Then they'd have a break, have lunch and some training, and then they'd have practice at 2. Under Cliff Kingsbury and Jonathan Gannon, Well, especially on Kingsbury, after that first year, they started moving schedules around, just kind of playing around with this. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the early afternoon, sometimes in the mid afternoon. Gannon's last year were all at, I think, 1:45 in the 1 o'clock hour. They all started on 1 o'clock hour, and now LaFleur is basically mirroring how Sean McVay does training camp schedules. And I think how the Cardinals worked it when they had those earlier things, that they would have their walkthroughs later. And I think we're going to go back to a early walkthrough and then an afternoon practice. But in this sense, I kind of like it because you get the later start. Although if you're coming from the East Valley, we know that driving to Glendale around 4 p.m. I mean, you're going to have to leave it at 2 to get there. Just to get through that downtown Phoenix corridor. But it does provide at least more opportunities. And the fact that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 practices come on basically the weekend, Friday or Sunday. Now, the sad thing is there are no Saturday practices at all, which is kind of a bummer, which makes it more accessible for fans. Their red and white practice will be a Sunday. I think it'll be their first practice that they have, or second practice that they have after the Hall of Fame game, and that'll be the last day of public practices for training camp.
Yeah, and that's all really kind of what matters now in how they're divvying it up. And again, because of when school starts and things of that nature, like starting on the 20 was it the 23rd that they report? Oh, 20.
They report on the 22nd, the first public
22nd, that's right. On the 24th. So like you look at it, right? Friday the 24th, you can go out there. Sunday the 26th, obviously it's a Sunday, so should be able to get out there. But then, those Tuesday, Wednesday, and Monday practices all being at 4 p.m. makes a huge difference. The Friday at 1:45 is an interesting one. That you would expect to be one of their only other Friday practice open to the public, that they might make it a little more accessible. But I guess their thought process is, well, we've had success with this anyways over the last couple of years in getting people out here, so it shouldn't hurt that bad. But I mean, for the most part, you can see that they're focused on trying to make it the small amount of days that it's accessible more accessible, or accessible for more people.
My guess is also that they're going to have more practices that are closed, because normally have a day off, because you don't have a practice on Saturday or Sunday. That I don't think that means that there's not going to be practice Saturday, Sunday. And my guess is that Friday ends a practice block, and so I think they're having practice early because they're going to have Saturday off.
Yeah.
And so that gets them out a little bit earlier. And then Sunday, they'll have a practice that won't be open to fans. I'm guessing that's how that will go. So like Friday, they will practice in front of fans. Saturday, they won't practice in front of fans. Sunday, they will. Monday will be off. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, in front of fans. Thursday, the 30th, not in front of fans. Friday, wrapping up that practice block. Then Saturday off. Sunday practice with no fans. Monday practice with fans. And then they'll
the Tuesday
they're going to be in Canton for those.
Yeah. Well, and they might not be on Tuesday, but it does make sense that they won't. That wouldn't be open, right? Like that could be their final tune-up before their first preseason game or the Hall of Fame game. It is interesting though. Last thing for me on this, at least, is like they come back from the Hall of Fame game. The Hall of Fame game's the 6th. They're going to take the 7th off, and then the 8th will be their dry run before the red and white practice is on the 9th this year. So it's on a Sunday. Now, obviously I understand a lot of that comes from them playing on the 6th, right? Like
Yeah.
you probably travel back that evening. You give the guys, a rest recovery day on the 7th, and then you do your practice and small dry run on the 8th. But the fact that it's on a Sunday and then they're still doing the 4 to 6 thing is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting what that goes. On August 2nd, the Sunday, the August 2nd will be the season ticket only group. And so that they will have a semi-public practice. So media will be available. And it's going to be interesting the type of reporting we get, because when practices are closed to fans, media members will still be there, but they can't report on what they see other than like in the first 15, 20 minutes.
Just like OTAs and stuff.
Just like a regular practice. But yeah, so let's kind of dive into, we talk about training camp, but coming up next on the Res Series podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. What do the Cardinals need to do before training camp on July 22nd? That's coming up next in Res Red.
There's a comfort in being somewhere that still feels familiar, where people know each other and life moves with a sense of purpose. Sunnyview is Silicon Valley's place to stay rooted, built on connection, care, and a way of life that feels steady and true. In a place that's constantly changing, this is somewhere that remains. Explore your options at sunny-view.org, a nonprofit life plan senior community within the Front Porch family.
We're back on the Rise of Seared podcast. This is our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Talking training camp. We talked about the training camp schedule, things we took away from that. What's left? So what do the Cardinals need to do between now and the start of training camp? What moves need to be made? What contracts need to be negotiated? For you, what's your number one thing that you want to see the Cardinals get done before camp starts?
It's interesting because I don't know if there's something that has to get done. In my take, we talked about the Michael Wilson situation. It probably behooves the Cardinals more than it does Wilson to get something done before training camp, right? And get things overall locked up. We've talked about Paris Johnson quite a bit. I think he's going to end up getting extended, but you also look at it and obviously they picked up his 5th-year option. You have the benefit of the franchise tag, so you really have him under control for 2 more years. So there's really no hurry if he's unable to stay healthy this year. So that brings up Jacoby, right? Because those are really the only 3 guys.
Yeah.
So that brings up Jacoby and makes you, I don't know, wonder if the right word. How long does this go for? Now, again, we're 4 weeks away from all of this. So it's not a huge deal right now. But I do think that you would want to have the Jacoby situation. I won't go too far and call it a mess, but the Jacoby situation.
The Jacoby Brissett nonsense, because it's nonsense.
I think you would want to have it done before training camp started. Like, you genuinely cannot string this out any longer at this point, right?
No, that for me, that's the number one thing. Whatever resolution it is, it needs to be done before camp. You either say to him, no, no deal, come to camp or not, and just say, this is it. You either put you draw the line in the sand, you say you're not doing it, or you get to a deal. And I think on both ends, you have to do that because, let's be honest, who needs a Jacoby Brissett training camp holdout? That does nothing but make the Cardinals, which they already do, look like an absolute joke. And I don't think it looks good for Brissett. I don't think it looks good for the Cardinals. But that, I think, number one, that is the number one thing that they have to resolve before camp. Either a slightly increased deal, a trade, a cut, or the line in the sand. Jacoby, your deal is what it is. Come or not. We've got other quarterbacks in camp. That's for me is number one. Number two, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but dadgum, they need to get an edge guy. They need to acquire someone else to help the edge room at this point. I don't think it's going to happen, but it needs to happen.
Yeah, and the question becomes how. How does it happen? Where do they acquire a guy like that, and at what cost? Or the flip side, do they get rid of their one productive edge guy who, again, there are some questions if he is truly invested in being part of this organization, right?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that situation, but we've been talking all off season. We've been talking since the end of last year. They got to get edge. They got to get edge. They got to improve at edge, and they did literally nothing. Just Sweat. Are we going to keep Josh Sweat? Is Josh Sweat going to be fine in training camp? I mean, you got guys like Jadeveon Clowney, but he's the type of player who's going to sign with like the Ravens or some team at some point. Joey Bosa, he wasn't going to come here anyway.
Right.
But yeah, honestly, it doesn't feel like there's people, but at the same time, you're like, they're really going to roll into the season with the outside linebacker group that they got. Really? I guess so. It's number 2 on my list, even though I don't really have any hope that it's going to change. But yeah, I do want to see if there's any contract things come and they don't always happen before training camp. It's usually within the first week of camp starting that you'll get the extensions, but it would be nice to see a deal get done, or at least some sort of good Cardinals news between now and then. I don't know what good Cardinals news we could get other than an extension for one of their key young players, because the Jacoby Brissett stuff, that's not good news. I mean, maybe they fix his contract in some way that he's happy enough, and then we can go back to just wondering how many wins he can get as the starter. But yeah, and then the other part is, let's not have anybody get hurt right before, let's not have a Walter Nolan injury right before camp when they're working out at the facility.
Right, exactly. Well, and I mean, obviously, Caleb Proctor's already,
those things happen, but that's actual practice as opposed to like a weight room workout. Let's not have one of those this year.
Yeah, and that's, you have that, and you have the lingering questions about the health overall of a number of guys, right? Like, where's James Conner? Where's Garrett Williams? Where's Trey Benson? Like, where are all of these guys? Obviously, Walter Nolan. Where are all these guys in their recovery process? And when will they be available to be full participants?
Yeah. Anything else that you can think of that we want to see the Cardinals do or accomplish before the start of training camp?
I think at the end of the day, we just want to see them accomplish being, what's the word I'm looking for? Competent, right? like you just want to see this organization as a whole and go, yeah, they're doing, like, they're on the right path. Because right now, no, with no fault of Michael Fleur, I just want everybody to understand that, with no fault of Michael Fleur, they're a genuine laughing stock. Like the situation with Jacoby Brissett, you ran through it. That it's there's no other wording that can be used other than laughable. So at what point do they stop being a laughing stock and start being run as a competent organization and giving a young, brand new first-time head coach a chance to be successful, right?
Yeah, that would be lovely. That would be lovely. We'll see what happens. Training camp starts July 22nd. Practices for the fans beginning July 24th. But until then, Seth and I will have probably 2 more shows between now and right before camp, where we do our division rankings. And then after that, we will hear a lot of shows with me and hopefully all of the Cardinals opponents and opposing writer to give us our opponent previews. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Rise up! Rise up! Rise up! Rise up!
There's a comfort in being somewhere that still feels familiar, where people know each other and life moves with a sense of purpose. Sunnyview is Silicon Valley's place to stay rooted, built on connection, care, and a way of life that feels steady and true. In a place that's constantly changing, this is somewhere that remains. Explore your options at sunny-view.org, a nonprofit life plan senior community within the Front Porch family.